Chapter 6, Breach and Clear. The Spartans reached the derelict warehouse, nestled along the murky banks of the River Thames. Their approach was methodical, shadows swallowing their forms as they moved with disciplined precision. The crumbling structure loomed before them, cloaked in silence and rust. Gina raised a clenched fist, signalling a halt. She crouched beside a stack of old piping, raising her binoculars toward the water. A boat skimmed silently along the northern current, its silhouette cutting through the fog like a blade. Her eyes narrowed, a sly grin tugging at the corner of her lips. "And what do we have here?" she murmured. "Target inbound. 5 minutes out. We need to reach the roof. Now. Move." Circling to the rear of the warehouse, the team retrieved their grappling devices, locking them onto the upper railings with a quiet clink. One by one, they ascended the weather-worn facade, their boots finding purchase on fractured ledges and rusted bolts. Barry crested the rooftop first. Dropping to a crouch, he extended a snake camera toward the grimy skylight, threading it between fractured panes. The tiny screen on his wrist flickered with grainy images. "Clear. No hostiles on this floor," Barry whispered. "Open and clear," Gina ordered. Paul led the breach, slipping through the roof window in a fluid motion. Gina followed, then Zeus, with Barry bringing up the rear. Inside, the room was dark and stale, filled with stacks of dusty crates and rows of discard supplies. "Looks like this was a storage site," Zeus muttered, eyeing the faded labels on food tins. "Probably their rations cache." "No contacts? Floor secure," Gina confirmed, scanning the room. "Zeus, take rear guard. Barry, Paul, you're with me. Let's move." "Yes, Captain," the three men chorused in low voices. The team flowed like water, descending a rusted stairwell in perfect formation. Their footfalls were soundless, their weapons poised. As they reached the ground floor, Gina lifted her hand again. Halt. The door ahead was solid steel, slightly ajar. She dropped to one knee, sliding the snake camera under the crack. 5 Black Death soldiers, armed and patrolling, she relayed, voice barely above a whisper. Heinrich is seated at a table, looks relaxed. The death claws are about to arrive. As if summoned by her words, the warehouse's front doors groaned open. 3 men entered, muscular, scarred, and exuding menace. Their dark fatigues bore the jagged fang emblem of the death claws. 2 held assault rifles across their chests. The third carried a silver briefcase, bulging at the seams with untraceable cash. "The deal's beginning," Gina whispered, adjusting the gain on her earpiece. The voices below grew clearer through the microphone feed, crackling with tension. "Hold position," she ordered. "No mistakes. No noise. Await my command." The team froze in place, breath low, fingers tightening on triggers. The air inside the warehouse was thick with anticipation, like the silence before a thunderstorm. Gina watched intently through the snake camera feed as the buyers entered the warehouse. Heinrich rose smoothly from his chair, his lips curling into a charming, if insincere, smile. "Welcome, gentlemen," he greeted, arms open, in theatrical flair. "A pleasure to—" "We haven't come for pleasantries, Mr. Fisher," the lead buyer interrupted coldly, his tone clipped and businesslike. "We're here to inspect the goods, pay, and leave." He took a seat beside the metal briefcase stuffed with unmarked currency, placing a hand on it possessively. Unfazed, Heinrich retained his showman's composure. Of course, he said smoothly, gesturing expansively. But before any transaction takes place, you must see what I have on offer. I promise you, it's something extraordinary. The buyer exchanged a brief look with one of his armed companions, then gave a grudging nod. Very well, show us. You won't be disappointed, Heinrich assured him with a salesman's flair, then turned sharply toward his nearby guards. Bring it out. Carefully. 2 Black Death soldiers heaved a reinforced crate onto a side table. Their movements were precise, almost reverent. The box bore no markings, just matte black plating and magnetic locks. Heinrich approached the crate like a ringmaster unveiling the main act. With deliberate, almost ceremonial movements, he opened the latches and lifted the lid to reveal 2 sleek missile launchers resting on foam supports like prized artifacts. Behold, he said, voice rich with dramatic flair, the KZ-98 twin launcher. Each unit comes loaded with dual high-yield rockets designed to obliterate anything, and I do mean anything, they strike. He let the words settle before continuing, voice low and conspiratorial. But what sets these beauties apart is their stealth capability. The buyer leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What exactly do you mean by stealth? Untraceable by radar, Heinrich replied with a smug grin. Once launched, they ghost through every known detection system. By the time anyone realizes they've been targeted, boom, it's already over. The buyer sat back slowly, nodding, his expression shifting from skepticism to approval. Impressive. I must admit, I'm thoroughly intrigued. How many units do you have on hand? Heinrich spread his arms. More than 20 crates, fully stocked, enough to light up a small war zone. But, he added, raising a cautionary finger, if we're going to continue this demonstration, I expect everyone here to exercise extreme discretion. No leaks, no noise. This is black market artistry, not a fireworks show. Gina swiftly withdrew the snake camera, keeping it out of sight as she turned to her team with a crisp tone of command. Zeus, breach and deploy an EMP to disable the Black Death soldiers' gear. Barry, flashbang immediately after the door opens. Paul, follow me in once the EMP goes off. Stun rounds only. We need the buyer alive for interrogation. The Spartans acknowledged the order with silent nods, each one moving with the precision of hardened professionals. Zeus took position at the door, hand on the handle, EMP grenade in his other. Barry primed the flashbang. Paul loaded his shotgun with non-lethal rounds, a quiet clack signaling his readiness. Gina's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Flash and clear, on my mark. Zeus flung the door wide and hurled the EMP grenade inside. It landed with a hollow clink and detonated in a crackling burst of electrical disruption. Sparks surged through nearby equipment and comms units, plunging the room into disarray. Heinrich and the buyer snapped to alert. Too late. Barry lobbed the flashbang a heartbeat later. Grenade! One of the Black Death soldiers managed to shout, right before the room exploded in blinding light and a concussive blast that shattered their senses. Go! 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 Gina roared, charging into the chaos with Paul at her flank. The two stormed the warehouse floor, expertly neutralizing the stunned hostiles with a mix of swift strikes and precision stun rounds. Zeus and Barry followed up, weapons raised and steady. With calculated force, they fired non-lethal rounds into the stunned buyers, dropping them before swiftly securing their wrists with reinforced cuffs. The operation was clean, sharp, professional. From the far side of the room, Heinrich, dazed but burning with fury, snatched up a jagged metal pipe and lunged at Gina with a growl of pure hatred. His attacks were wild and sluggish, his vision still compromised from the flashbang. Gina barely flinched. With a smooth turn of her hips and a deflective arm lock, she disarmed him mid-swing and sent him crashing to the floor. She pinned him down with a boot to the back and leaned in, expression cold. "Ah!" Heinrich howled. "You Texan bitch." Gina smirked down at him. "How flattering that you remember. I assumed you'd have grown out of your daddy's shadow, but apparently I was wrong." Zeus, watching from nearby, frowned behind his visor. "Is there something I should know?" Gina straightened, her tone shifting to one of hardened recollection. "I knew Heinrich during the Grand War. His father, Herbert Fischer, was a weapons trafficker, also dabbled in drugs and human cargo. I apprehended him myself. He was sentenced to life in a max security prison." Heinrich spat venomously from the floor. "Where 3 of his old clients, you arrested them too, beat him to death in the gym." Gina didn't flinch. "After that, I had you placed in an orphanage. I thought maybe you'd find a different path. Clearly, I misjudged." "You honestly believed dumping me in some rat hole would erase what you did?" Heinrich snarled. "After Dad died, I was left with his debts. I became him to survive. And when Thanatos offered me purpose, I took it." The Deathclaw buyer, still cuffed and seated against the wall, spoke up bitterly. "Then inform Thanatos the Deathclaws will no longer be your puppets. We're done with the Black Death." Paul's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he marched over and delivered a swift punch to the buyer's face. "You think that earns you redemption? Scum." Gina was on him in a flash, grabbing his wrist mid-motion and landing a sharp slap across his cheek. "Stand down, Spartan. No striking unarmed prisoners." Paul staggered back, guilt washing over his face. "But they're terrorists. You've seen what they're capable of. They don't deserve, They deserve justice," Gina cut in sharply. "Not revenge. We're not executioners, Paul. If you can't control your anger, you'll become the very thing we're fighting against." Paul's head dropped. "I understand, Captain. I'm sorry." Gina gave a slow nod, letting the tension settle. "I'll overlook it, this time, but I expect discipline from here on out." She turned to the rest of the team, her voice once again crisp and commanding. "Spartans, get them on their feet. I'm calling in extraction. These prisoners will be transferred into proper custody. Let's wrap this up." The team moved with disciplined precision, escorting the subdued prisoners into the open, their weapons lowered but still ready. Gina activated her wrist communicator, her expression as composed as ever, despite the adrenaline still simmering beneath the surface. The tension in the warehouse ebbed slightly, but Zeus remained troubled, his thoughts clouded by the confrontation between Gina and Heinrich. It had revealed just how blurred the lines had become. Justice or vengeance, duty or retribution. He knew now that finding his own path would not be simple. Outside, the dull hum of the River Thames provided a stark contrast to the recent chaos. The Spartans moved swiftly to secure the perimeter, positioning the prisoners by the dock for extraction. Gina's voice cut through the night. Captain Rhodes reporting, Heinrich Fischer and 4 Deathclaw affiliates are in custody. Request immediate pickup. Over. Copy that, Captain. Thames Police en route. ETA 5 minutes. Over. Understood. We'll be waiting. Out. Barry scanned the dim skyline. All clear, Captain, he confirmed, his tone businesslike as he lowered his rifle slightly. Move out, Paul ordered, taking point with firm authority. He kept a close eye on the prisoners, ensuring no one tried anything foolish before the handover. Moments later, a low thrum grew steadily louder as a sleek police boat approached, cutting across the water like a blade. The vessel moored with efficiency, and a squad of armed officers disembarked. At their head stood Chief Inspector McGee, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stony face and eyes that rarely softened. Gina's expression tightened slightly at the sight of him. Their history was complicated, shaped by years of friction and mutual respect. McGee's eyes swept the scene, locking onto Zeus's gleaming armor with clear suspicion. Who the hell is this? He demanded, eyeing the high-tech suit with undisguised distrust. Zeus stepped forward without hesitation. Name's Zeus. Further details are classified. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. McGee frowned. Watch your tone, soldier. You're speaking to a superior. Zeus didn't flinch. I show respect to those who earn it. The atmosphere stiffened instantly. Barry shifted his weight. Paul's hand moved instinctively closer to his baton. Stand down, Gina said firmly, stepping between them. Recruit Zeus is new to field ops, Chief Inspector. He's not yet accustomed to the niceties of dealing with senior brass. McGee's lips tightened, unimpressed. Then I suggest you get him up to speed. I don't tolerate insubordination, Captain. Gina gave a curt nod. Nor do I, sir. She turned to Zeus, her tone clipped. Well? Zeus hesitated, then dipped his head in respectful acknowledgement. Yes, ma'am. Understood. McGee studied him for a moment longer, then turned away with a grunt of dismissal. Sir, Sergeant Chappelle approached, saluting. All prisoners secured aboard were ready for departure. Good, McGee replied, stepping aboard. He paused briefly to cast one last look at Gina. Let's hope your recruit learns fast. With that, the police boat roared to life, disappearing into the night's misty horizon. Zeus watched it vanish, his jaw clenched tight. He said nothing, but his narrowed eyes spoke volumes. Gina shifted her attention to her team, her expression a measured blend of approval and discipline. Well done under the circumstances, she began, her tone firm, but not without warmth. Paul, Barry? You both performed admirably on your first official deployment. The brothers exchanged a quick glance, relief softening their features. Thank you, Captain, they replied in unison, pride evident in their voices. Then her gaze settled on Zeus. His actions had spoken louder than expected, and despite his lack of formal training under her command, he'd shown a natural aptitude in the field. And as for you, Zeus, Gina continued, a hint of approval threading through her tone. Considering you've not undergone my instruction, you held your own remarkably well. Zeus gave a respectful nod, the corners of his mouth twitching into a modest smile. I appreciate that, Captain. Her expression hardened slightly, bringing him back down to earth. But don't let it go to your head. Confidence is one thing. Arrogance is a liability. You'll soon learn that not every mission will be this clean. And watch your tongue around law enforcement. We're here to work with them, not rile them up. Zeus met her gaze and nodded earnestly. Understood completely, ma'am. Good, Gina said, satisfied. She gave the surrounding alleyway a final scan, her instincts ever alert. Let's get out of the slum district before anyone else decides to make trouble. We've already stirred the hornet's nest. With that, the Spartans slipped out of the dim confines of the warehouse, their footsteps swift and synchronized. Moving as one, they navigated the maze-like alleys of Canary Wharf's broken underbelly, leaving behind the wreckage of another battle. As the Spartans made their way back to the warehouse's main entrance, Gina issued a command to the guards stationed there. With a low, mechanical groan, the towering steel gates creaked open, revealing a figure waiting on the other side. A young woman stood in the wintry dusk, wrapped in a thick EMD-issue coat. A sleek camera bot hovered beside her, its lens trained on the Spartans with quiet intensity. Gina's expression darkened the moment she recognized the figure. "Oh, shit," she muttered under her breath, tension tightening her jaw. Zeus, immediately curious, leaned in. "What's wrong? Do you know her?" Paul answered before Gina could. His voice carried a wary undertone. "Terrorists aren't the only threat we deal with. Some adversaries don't carry weapons. They carry microphones. That's Stacey Watson, reporter for EMD News." Barry added dryly, "Let Gina handle this. They won't care what we have to say." But it was already too late. Stacey darted forward, her camera bot following with a soft hum. "Captain Rhodes," she called, breathless yet focused, extending a microphone. "Stacey Watson, EMD News. It's an honor to meet you. You're a legend from the Grand War." And Gina met her outstretched hand with a polite shake, though her body remained rigid. "My reputation's been romanticized," she replied coolly. "I'm just a soldier doing her job." Unshaken, Stacey pressed on. "Would you be willing to answer a few questions? It's not often anyone from your unit makes a public appearance." "That depends on the questions," Gina replied, her tone measured. The camera bot shifted into position, silently recording. "Captain, the slum district shelters society's most disadvantaged. Would you agree that it's also become a haven for terrorist activity?" Gina didn't flinch. "The slum district is filled with those the Emperor has turned his back on. It's no surprise that terrorists exploit their desperation to bolster their ranks." Stacey's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here, Captain, and not the Emperor's private force? Where's Xerxes?" "Xerxes operates for profit. They protect where there's a check, not where there's a need. I'm not here for money. I'm here to safeguard lives. Beyond that, the details of our mission are classified." Stacey's attention then shifted, her gaze locking on Zeus. "And who might you be?" she asked, stepping closer. "I don't believe we've seen a Spartan in armor like yours before. Care to explain your role?" Zeus blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I... Before he could answer, Paul reached forward, snatching the hovering camera bot out of the air with swift precision, holding it steady by the chassis. At the same time, Barry stepped between Stacey and Zeus, blocking her path with a soldier's unspoken authority. "Hey, that's expensive equipment," Stacey exclaimed, trying to wrest it back. Gina stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "That's enough. This interview is over." She shot Zeus a sharp look. Get out of here. You're not ready to handle the media. Without a word, Zeus turned and strode away, heading towards his waiting motorcycle. Stacy called after him, once, then again, but he ignored her. He mounted the bike, revved the engine, and tore off down the narrow road, leaving behind a flurry of exhaust and the sound of one sharply shouted word echoing in his wake. "Fuck!" Stacy snapped, her frustration finally boiling over. With Zeus gone, Gina refocused her attention. "Stacy, this area is still under threat. You need to leave before something happens you can't report on." Stacy's expression shifted, still defiant, but laced now with understanding. "I'm just doing my job, Captain. People have a right to know what's happening in places like this." Gina's voice softened, but only slightly. "Then do it smart. If this explodes, you won't be helping anyone, not with a camera, and certainly not with a headline. Find a safer way to tell the story." Chapter 7. Reflection. As Zeus tore through the darkened streets on his Centaur 32X, the neon lights of Canary Wharf fading behind him, his thoughts remained on Chief Inspector McGee. The man's demeanour had struck a nerve. Arrogance, laced with disdain, and Zeus needed answers. "Apollo," he called, his voice steady over the wind. "Pull up everything non-classified on Chief Inspector Stephen McGee." "Right away, sir," the AI replied smoothly. Within seconds, a data stream projected onto Zeus's HUD. McGee's profile appeared. A decorated veteran of the British Army turned senior officer in the Metropolitan Police. At first, he had been a celebrated crime fighter, sharp, efficient, and admired. But over the years, the sheen had dulled. Rumours swirled of corruption, selective justice, and troubling friendships. Among the most disturbing entries was a known association with a suspected child predator, an ex-host of children's programming linked to EMD. Zeus frowned beneath his helmet. "So much for honour," he muttered, distrust deepening in his chest. He soon reached the hidden entrance to the underground tunnel network beneath the mansion. Parking his bike in its designated slot, he deactivated the nanolinker, and the Mark IV Zeus power armor dissolved from his body like smoke in the wind. "Now, Nick Adams once more," he sighed. "What a day," he muttered, weariness settling into his bones. His phone buzzed, a message from his uncle. Nick groaned, but knew he couldn't ignore it. Not tonight. Dragging his feet through the dim corridors, walls humming faintly with dormant tech, Nick reached the communication room and slumped into the chair. "Apollo, connect me to William." Moments later, the monitor lit up. William Stenhouse lounged in his office, spinning gently in his chair, a tumbler of whiskey in one hand, a datapad in the other. His familiar presence brought a flicker of comfort. Nick, fighting sleep, offered a half-hearted jab. "Checking your latest stocks again?" William didn't look up. "Only when they crash." Then his tone warmed. "I got Rhodes's report. She was surprisingly impressed." Nick straightened slightly, pride blooming despite his exhaustion. "Guess I did all right then. Maybe I'm ready to take on Thanatos." William raised an eyebrow. "Confidence is good. Overconfidence gets you killed. You did well today, but you're still green. Keep your feet on the ground." Nick yawned but nodded. "I hear you. I'll learn from Gina. She's tough, but fair. Maybe she'll even teach me some proper hand-to-hand," he said, trying to sound optimistic, despite his drooping eyes. William softened. She will. But right now, what you need more than training is sleep. Don't argue with that, Nick muttered, barely stifling another yawn. He hesitated, then asked, Will, what's going to happen to my house in Biggleswade? William set his drink down. It's being handled. All your stuff, your parents' things, they're being transferred here. 2 to 3 days, tops. Your new room's the first one on the right, top of the stairs. Nick smiled faintly. Thanks, I didn't want to lose any of it. You won't, William assured him. Go on, rest. Nodding, Nick dragged himself out of the chair and followed the hallway to the grand staircase. Ascending, he found his room, just as described. The door opened with a soft click to reveal a space that looked like it belonged in a high-end hotel. Plush bedding, ambient lighting, shelves waiting for memories. He barely made it to the bed before collapsing onto it. The mattress embraced him like a warm blanket. Apollo's voice echoed gently through the room. Rest well, sir. Nick didn't answer. He was already asleep.